What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Cedar Ridge Chronicles. If you've never been here before, I want to welcome you. My name is Daniel Williams, and you are in for a treat today. This is going to be the most comprehensive mounting video that I've ever done on my channel. It's going to go from start to finish, showing you how to mount a whitetail deer head. I hope I've included just about everything. The only thing that's not going to be on here is the fleshing and salting processes, but I do have videos for those on my channel, and I'm going to include the links to those videos in the description of this video. So you'll go down there, click on that, and it'll take you over there. You can check that out. Also, I have got Amazon links below too. So the products that I use in this video, you can go down there, you can click on those links, it'll take you directly to the same products that I'm using in my shop. You can buy those. It doesn't cost you any more to use that link. It's just easier than going and having to look it up on Amazon. I've also got a store for my channel. Please check that out if you want to. You got merchandise, got shirts on here like this, the decals, stickers, stuff like that, coffee mugs. So anything on there that y'all might want, go on there, check that out, and grab any kind of merchandise that you might want that's related to my channel. Now, a couple of things as y'all get started with this video. First off, you're going to notice that some of the capes are not consistent through each clip. That's because I did not use the same deer from start to finish. What I did was I just recorded different stages of the process, so it may be different capes. So if y'all see a hole in a cape and all of a sudden the hole's not there in the next clip, it's because it's a completely different cape, just showing the relevance of that stage of the process. Also, during the tanning stage and when you get ready to prep the cape to mount it up, I did not mention that you need to wash that cape really well. The skin side and the fur side needs to be rinsed really well with water until there's no color left in that water to get all the tan off that cape. Then it needs to be dried, whether towel dried or tumble dried, however you like to do it. So guys, y'all are awesome. Thanks for joining me. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. Give me a thumbs up if you like the video. Y'all enjoy. All right, guys, our capes have been sitting overnight. As y'all can see, I've got them in these plastic baskets. That way they can drain. They're covered in salt, and plastic does not rust. So anytime that y'all got a way to use plastic in a taxidermy shop, do that, because with the acid and the salt, you'll get a lot of corrosion. What we're going to do is I'm going to take about 2 to 2.5 pounds of salt per tub, and where I've got these marks on here, that is 5 gallons. So what I'm going to do is mix it to about right there. It's going to be somewhere around 3 gallons. It really doesn't matter a whole lot how much salt you use. All we're going to do is just get some basic salt water just to help draw the rest of that blood out of these capes, help wash them a little bit, and get them cleaned up so that when they go into the pickle, our pH will stay the same. It's enough right there. These buckets, if y'all ever use these buckets right here, with your quick white, a bucket that size is almost exactly 5 pounds of salt. So I always save this. You can fill it right up flush when you're doing your pickle solution. That right there is a great measuring cup. All right, that's got our rehydrating baths ready to go. What this is going to do is it's going to relax the fibers in this cape, and the capes will get back pliable again. You'll see in just a minute once we do this how much blood this draws out into these tubs. Makes it a whole lot easier when you go into your pickle. Your pH should stay exactly the same if your cape is completely clean. Usually they change very, very little. The last several that I've done, I have started adding just a few drops extra of acid than what it calls for, and have had zero problems ever having to add acid again. Let's get these put in here. I don't even rinse the salt off of them because this is just salt water anyway. Just put it down in there. Just want to make sure that it's as submerged as possible. It's going to be pretty stiff. All right, and we're just going to let those sit. It can take anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour and a half or so. Some capes are a little different than others, depends on how thick it is. On a real thick cape, they're still gonna have a little bit of stiffness to them, which is okay. By the end of the whole process, they'll be broke down where they need to be. What you wanna do while these are sitting in here, about every 10 to 15 minutes, make sure you agitate that. You wanna stir it up really good, turn the cape inside out a few times or whatever you wanna do to make sure that that salt and water stays on that entire cape, because it's gonna try to float on you, especially with that much salt in there. So you want to try to make sure that you keep changing that around so that it can draw as much of that blood out of that hide as possible. All right, our capes have been soaking long enough. Y'all can see the water, how stained that is. What we're going to do now is we're going to take these out of here. We're going to wash them really, really well. You want to wash them until there's no color coming out of it from that blood. Get it all out of the fur. And then what we're going to do is, once that's done, we're going to mix up our pickling solution. Okay, y'all can see the capes just about don't have any color left in them. Got our tubs cleaned out. We're going to mix up our pickling solution. The pickling solution that I use is McKenzie Ultimate Acid, water and salt. It calls for, I think it's a ½ ounce of acid per pound of salt per gallon of water. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and mix this up and get in these tubs, and we're going to go ahead and put our capes in. And now there again, this bucket right here holds 5 pounds of salt. So it's a lot easier just to keep one of those on hand. You just fill it up to the top and you can go ahead and get all your salt measured out that way. What I've done is I've got a little cup right here that's got a piece of electrical tape on it. And that top of that tape is right how much acid I need for 5 gallons of water. Now, one thing y'all may have noticed is that I pickle in separate containers. You can pickle all in the same container with all your hides together. Now, if you do that, make sure that you tag your capes. You don't want to get capes mixed up. You want to make sure whose cape is whose. Make sure that they're all tagged. And also make sure you keep an eye on that pH. The more hides that you introduce into a pickle, the more fluctuation you're going to get. Even though those ratios should stay the same, you're still going to have a lot going on at one time. And the reason that I do this, I kind of work in a big assembly line. You know, y'all have seen the way that I use this and the way that I mount and the way that I finish deer. I like to have an assembly line going, so I'm always doing steps. Every day I'm doing some of everything. And by doing this, it helps me keep control over what's going on with my pH. If something horrible happens for whatever reason, at least it's one cape and not a big giant batch of capes. So keep that in mind too. All right, we got our capes put in the tubs. We'll give y'all just a few pointers as to how to do that correctly. When you put those capes in there, you don't just want to throw them in there and let them kind of ball up on themselves. For one thing, you want to open the neck up, run it back and forth, and let that water, that pickle solution, get up in that cape. That way you got it on the hair side and on the flesh side. Make sure you get good distribution of all of that pickle. Once you get that done, take the cape and roll the cape over. You can see how I've got it hair side up on the back part of that cape, where I've just flipped it over to where it's holding all of the skin underneath the pickle. The hair is going to float, and the back side of that cape will float more than the rest of it. So as long as you flip that back part of that cape over, it will help hold that under that pickle. Also, when you first put that in the pickle solution, you're going to want to press down all the way to the bottom of the tub and make sure that you press any air bubbles or air pockets that are up under that cape. Make sure that air comes out, because what you'll end up with is a spot in there of air with no pickling solution touching that cape, and you'll end up with a spot of raw cape. And if you do that and never agitate those capes, you will have hair fall out, because you're going to have just a raw piece of hide. So what we're going to do, I'm going to give that about 10 or 15 minutes. I'm going to stir it again. We're going to check the pH on it, make sure all the pH is stable enough to let it sit overnight. At first, you really want to check too, make sure you don't have any salt that's accumulated in the bottom of your tub. You want to make sure that that salt dissolves completely, even if it means agitating it several times for the first 30 minutes or so. Check that, make sure all that salt's completely dissolved. All right, we've agitated our capes a couple times. They've been sitting for just a little while. Now we're going to check the pH on them. The pH papers that you want to buy, they make a bunch of different kinds of them. Some of them go from just a crazy range. They'll be like 0 to 10 or whatever. On these right here, this goes 0 to 3. That way you've got half increments, and you can really tell the difference between the colors. If that pH tries to get up above, about a 1.5, you can really see the difference in that color. It's not quite as broad a range of numbers. Like this right here is what you want. You see that goes from 0 to 3. And what you're looking for is between about a 1 and a 1.5. Paper starts out blue. Just gonna put it in a little bit of this right here. It's that lime green, that's what you're looking for. See that right there is almost right in between that 1 and 1.5. That is absolutely perfect. So when you do that, we're going to check all 3 of them. As many capes as you've got, as much pickle as you've got, you want to check every one of them, make sure that's okay. As that stays in there overnight, it may change by the next day. The first 24 hours especially, after about a day or 2, it's really going to level out, and you can almost just leave them in there for weeks and not even check them if you don't want to. But I wouldn't advise that. If you're going to leave them in there a long time, check your pH every once in a while. If the pH starts to climb, gets up a little too high, add a little bit of acid, make sure you stir it up really well. Check the pH again, that should bring you back down. Okay, now your capes have been in the pickle for at least 3 days. You can leave them in here longer than that if you want to, but they need to stay in there at least 3 days and absorb that pickle. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take them out, we're going to wring them out, drain them, and we are going to shave them on our fleshing machine. Let's get started. All right, our cape is drained pretty well. Y'all can see how thick this is, all the texture it has in it. When I pinch it right there, see that thickness? That's what we got to get rid of. Let's get started. All right, now we've got our capes that are completely finished pickling. They've been shaved. They have sat in the pickle again overnight for about probably 24 hours. They've been in the pickle to let that pickle penetrate on through the rest of that cape now that it's thinned. Don't have that thickness anymore. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna take 1 tablespoon of baking soda per gallon of water, and we have to neutralize these. We've got to bring that pH back up to about a 5+ and get them back to where they're non-acidic. All 4 of these are ready to go. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make up a neutralizing solution for each one of these. We're gonna get them neutralized, and then they're gonna sit for a minimum of 30 minutes. I prefer 30 minutes to an hour. Usually around 45 minutes is what I do. And I like to agitate about every 15 minutes. So we're gonna do that, and then we're gonna come back and we're gonna tan them. These marks that I've got on the side of my tubs, if y'all remember, they're at 5 gallons. So I'm gonna do, put these 3 tablespoons of baking soda in here. Then we're gonna fill this up to just below that mark, up to about 3 gallons. All right, that's got about 3 gallons of water. We're gonna put our rinse cape back down in there, and you wanna make sure that it gets really good water contact. Make sure there's no air bubbles in it, just like you do when you put it in the pickle. And we're gonna leave it in there for about 45 minutes, agitating about every 10 to 15. All right, now hides have been neutralizing now for about 45 minutes, so we're gonna take them out, rinse them really, really well, get all the baking soda and water off of them. For all you guys, just a clean cape. Gonna drain them, and I'm gonna towel dry mine. I roll mine up in a couple of towels. That's how I dry mine. You do that skin side out before you can apply the tan. Now you can also, if you've got an old washing machine, as long as it will pump water out of it, it doesn't have to agitate, it don't have to do anything but spin and pump the water out. You can use an old washing machine and use the spin cycle to swing all that water out. Works absolutely great. I've also heard of people using a dryer that doesn't have the heating element work in it and putting the cape in there with towels and just tumbling it in there. You can do it with a tumbler too. With towels probably work pretty good too. All right, the cape should be just about dry now on the inside where we can apply our tan. Little tip for y'all, save you a small bottle like this, put your tan in. I keep mine in a 1 gallon jug that I fill from a 5 gallon bucket. The 5 gallon bucket is extremely cheap per gallon or per ounce compared to the other ways of ordering it. I take that funnel that's sitting on top of it and I fill this bigger bottle, the gallon bottle, and with it, I can fill this bottle very easily. And this one is easy to apply tan with a little bit at a time on the capes. At least that's just my favorite way of doing it anyway. I use a glove. I don't use a brush and all that mess to paint it on. I just squirt it on the hide, use my hand in a glove, and just smear it on there. Makes really good contact that way. It don't cost you anything except the cost of a glove. All right, I'm going to show y'all how to lay your hides out. Makes it a little bit easier to store these things while they're getting tanned. You'll spread that out, take your brisket down at the bottom, get your back spread out across the top, the head and neck off to the side like that, where everything matches up side to side. You can take your tan and get a lot of the cape that way without really having to move anything. All that worked in. Just make sure you get good contact everywhere on the cape. Once you get that whole side covered, flip the head over. Get the other side of the face. All right, now Once you've got the head and the ears done, you can roll the nose over. If you'll fold that ear down, roll that nose over, and just start to roll it this way. As you're rolling, finish up the rest of the neck on this side. Roll it on over. Make sure that ear is tucked like that. Then finish up this side of the cape. All right, now it's completely covered. And once you roll this up, that's going to stay to the inside of the cape, and this whole cape is going to fold in half and meet on both sides. That way you've got skin on skin contact. Keeps that fur and any water in the fur from messing up your tan penetration. Just like that right there. You can just kind of roll that together and keep it out of the way. And just push that to the side, and that's got to sit overnight. I'll leave mine sitting overnight. I'll mount that in the morning. I like to go straight in right there on the ends. What we're going to do on the front, we're going to go straight up toward the nose. As we work our way back down to the edge of that mouth, we're going to angle this until it goes all the way sideways down here at the bottom. Not how a lot of people do this, but I have found, for me personally, that's the easiest way to make those lips tuck the way that you want them to. On that nostril, I like to cut it pretty deep on that back side, because on the back of that nostril back in there, there's a hole. It goes all the way up into the sinus cavity. So you need to make it the same way on your finished mount. Come right up in the back just slightly. Like that. And I'm going to go to the tear duct just a little bit. This is another one of those places where I will backfill with clay to make for a tight fit. And that right there, guys, is all that I'm going to do. I'm going to repeat that on the other side of the face, and that's all the cutting that we're going to do with our Dremel. Now we're going to mount our form to the mounting stand. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my knife. On some forms, there may be a little bit of material left over from where they've taken it out of the mold. You can trim that off. You see that line going down through there? Just take that and just trim it off smooth. Alrighty. Now you're going to need to prep the form somehow to get your hide paste to stick. Depending on what kind of hide paste you use, some of them will not stick at all unless you do some really heavy form prep. I use Pro 1. It bonds to just about anything, but on some of these forms there's so much of that, whatever they use to release it from the molds, that it almost has a hard feel to it, and that glue don't want to grab real well without at least puncturing that. So what I'll just do is take a couple of screws, and you can scrape this like that right there, just scoring it. We'll give it something for that glue to stick into, and it acts like an anchor, or you can use them and poke holes. Just like that right there. I do that a lot around the face, especially around the eyes, the tear ducts, and up in all these little crevices and stuff in the nose. That glue will get down in those holes and just kind of grab and help pull that hide and hold it up against that form. So you just want to scrape that off. I mean, they make rasps, they make form prep tools, all kind of stuff, but anything that will scrape that off of that form, I mean, it will work just fine. You just want to make sure that you get that done. Make sure that all your lines get down in all the creases and muscles, so that glue can get in there and really hold that stuff in place once you get that mounted up. All right, now we're going to move on to some hide prep. First off, we've got to take the cartilage out of the ears. In one of my early videos back, I guess it's been 2 years ago now, I used to take the cartilage out of the ears while the hide was still green, but do not do that. It is a lot easier if you take this cartilage out after the cape has been tanned. The skin is a lot tougher once you get the cape tanned, and it's a lot less prone to tearing those ears when you go to remove this cartilage. You get that loose, just about peel it off with your hand. And I'm going to go ahead and show y'all too, when you get up here, well, so you can peel it off with your hand. Always good to carry your needle nose. When you get up here toward the top of this ear, you're going to see some hairs sometimes in some places. Try to pull through. Just trying to make a hole. You see those little hairs right there? You take your scalpel and cut that loose. Just cut the skin loose from that cartilage as you continue to peel this off. It won't always prevent a hole. You see there, it just busted open a little bit. But it will definitely keep you from ripping that ear from one end to the other. These little holes are very easy to patch with just a little bit of a dryer sheet. Y'all can use a skiving knife to get rid of all the rest of this cartilage too if you miss some. I always just use my scalpel, but that's what I'm comfortable with. But if you've not tried it with either, go ahead and buy you a skiving knife. They're very cheap and very easy to use. Cut this all the way down to the ear butt. Then I'm just going to cut this off right along where the skin meets that ear butt. Save the ear butt to fit inside the ear liners. Just like that. I'm going to do the other side and we'll resume with the face. Okay, now that the cartilage has been removed from the ears, we're going to thin the nostrils down some. Just get you a fleshing cone or a hammer handle like I've got. You can see there's some pretty bad holes right here in the nose where it's been cut, which is fine. That's an easy fix. All I'm going to do is just take my scalpel and go right up to the edge. You just want to get that as thin as you possibly can. That way, while these nostrils are gluing up, they don't try to roll up on you. Make sure you get all the cartilage that's left on here too, especially. All right, once you get all that thin, go around, just trim that even. Make it glue up a whole lot better. Just like that. You can see how much more even that is than this guy. Do the same thing to the other side. Now we're going to do the same to the eyes. This is your opportunity right here to get those eyes as thin as you can. That'll keep them from shrinking up and drawing, pulling on the face while your head is drying. See that line right there? That's where the eyelashes are at. You want to try to get it as thin as you can right there, all the way down to where you can see that separation. And thin it on down where you can trim it off. Do that all the way around. All right, once you've got that thinned down like that, we'll do the same thing we did on the nose. You'll leave about a 1/2 inch of skin. We can further trim it when we get ready to tuck the eyes. We'll make sure that you leave plenty to work with. Just like that. All right, I'm going to do the other side. We'll move on to the next step. All right, we got all of our holes repaired. So now we're going to get our air liners. We're going to cut them, get them ready to put in. Just like that. So you're going to want to cut that off. That's done with a metal blade. That metal blade with the real small teeth in it keeps it from slinging this thing all over the room. You can do it with a demolition blade or a wood blade, but it'll almost tear your air liner. You don't want just an absolute ton of glue on here. You just want to make sure that there's enough for some squeeze out so that it fills in all the air gaps. Just slide that in that ear. Take that inner ear, just press it right into place. It'll pop right through where you trim that ear liner. So that kind of locks. It'll just kind of lock in place. It'll sit right behind that ear liner right there. It's like a puzzle piece and hold that ear in place. Do that with both of them. Just like that. I'm not going to be too worried about messing with the ears until we get the deer mounted. We're going to have to put clay in around the ear butts to form them. All right, now we're going to set the eyes. These right here are 32 millimeter eyes. Always make sure that you check with your supplier on your forms and see on the form that you order which size eye that you need. The really small forms are a 28, they go up to a 30, and the larger forms are usually a 32. They do make a 34, but the biggest I've ever had to use is a 32. Put a little bit of clay in behind here. You want to check that pupil in that eye. The pupil's running this way. You want to make sure that stays level with that tear duct. You don't want that eye twisted and the deer looking all cattywampus. People are going to notice it. Even if they don't even know to look for it, it's just not going to look right. Line that pupil up. We're just going to mash that in place all the way down till that clay squeezes out and the eye is right up against the foam. Just like that. Fill that tear duct in with some clay. This clay that I'm using is a white Marble X clay. I'll put a link in the description below where y'all can order that off Amazon. It's a really, not a dry clay, it's moist, but it's very, very firm. It's not like air dry, moist air dry clay that's the brown color. This is a lot harder and it's almost hard to work with, but I really do like it on the eyes and doing the skull cap because it does hold its shape so well. When you're moving that cape around and getting everything put together, it does not squish out of place and lose its form the same way that the moist pottery clay does. Don't see how easy that is. You don't have to take a whole lot of time messing with this unless you just want to. Just going to get your eye. We're going to do the other side. Just like that. Okay, now we're going to trim our skull cap. You can see the way this cap is cut. It does not fit the top of that head very well. It needs to be setting. You can use the contour of the top of that skull as it slopes down toward the back and down toward the face. It needs to be sitting about like that, but a little bit lower. So we're going to trim that off just a little bit. General rule of thumb on most forms, if you'll cut this right below where that skull cap goes in right there, that's usually about where it needs to be. It's not that way on every one of them, but it's usually real close. Just like that. You can see how well that fits now. Got that flow just goes right up over there. This gives us about maybe an 1/8 inch where we can build up some clay, put our screws in, and they'll just transition right perfect into the front and the back of that head. Now we're going to drill our holes in here. I always use 4 screws. I've seen it done with 2, and I don't think that's a very good idea. as these things age, or if they fall off the wall, there's always a chance of that skull cap cracking, and 4 usually will help hold that in place if something bad happens. Use long screws in the front, some a little bit shorter than that in the back, and that is ready to go. Okay, now we're ready for some glue. Unfortunately, I'm out of gloves, so I'm going to have to use my bare hands, which is pretty typical. I'm always running out of something. I guess that's a good thing. I'm going to cover this whole form except for the back where I'm going to do my stitches. I like to add glue as I'm stitching. That way your hands are not covered in glue while you're trying to get all that stitch work done. Also, hold off on the front of the nose and the mouth for just a minute until we get the head stitched up. We'll do the snout afterwards. You can also wait on the brisket until last too. There's no reason to put glue on it now. It'll be dried before you get to it if you do. All right, now we're ready for the cape. Make sure you got your cape stretched as far as it will go. It's easier to do right here than it is on the form. All right, take this, turn it inside out on your hand, run that over the head, just like that. Fold that over. Try to keep glue from getting all over the skin. And always just set that up on the face right there. Then you can stand this up and pull that cape on down over the form. Stand it up like that. Just start working this down. Alrighty. Now that we've got that generally where we want it, now we're going to attach the antlers. We're going to take some more of this Marblex clay. We're going to clay in the skull cap. Get some glue on there. Just don't put your glue on the back quite yet. When you go to tie the stitches up and stuff, you don't get glue all over the place. Just get the front side up around the bottom of these antler burrs. Get glue all over the place, that's fine. Glue comes off very easily. I'd rather have hide stuck on here than not have enough glue. We can clean the glue off after it gets dry. All right, we're going to pull our skin on up around the antlers. Go ahead and just lay the nose in place. That'll hold everything where it needs to be. All right, now I'm going to show y'all how to start y'all stitches. I use B55 bowstring. That's what I use for my stitches. I use it black. Brown works great too. Always pull off a little bit more than I need so that you got plenty to work with. Stuff's cheap and a roll of it will last you forever. So don't be stingy with it. All right, on your V-cut, you want to find where it comes to that point. I go up through one side. And this is going to come around the back side of that antler. And then your point on the other side where you made that V-cut right here. It's going to go down into that side, just like that. What that'll do when you draw that together, your knot is going to be on the underside of the skin. Show y'all how to do this. We're going to start out with a lock knot. We're going to go 1, 2, 3 overhand knots, just like that, and pull that tight. And that'll help hold it in place. Do a couple more overhand knots to lock that down. Just like that. Cut off your slack. Then what we're going to do is just a standard baseball stitch all the way down to the end of this point here. Down to the end of this point here. Those two sides right there are going to meet. I like to stitch coming up through the cape. Some people come down from the fur side. Is just personal preference. Going through the fur side keeps the hair out of your stitch a little bit better, while as coming through the skin side will tuck the skin downward instead of upward, and help that seam to sit a little bit flatter. But as long as you don't put too much tension on your stitches, the seam's going to sit flat either way. So I've seen it done both ways, and both can turn out perfect. So really it's just personal preference. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to keep continuing this baseball stitch all the way down until I get to that point. Now keep in mind, you want to make sure that your stitches stay reasonably close together. I'm going to say mine are usually probably about 1/4 inch. I wouldn't go much further apart than that, or you're going to have stitches try to open up on you as the cape dries. Okay, once you get down toward this end, I'm going to make the last final 2 stitches. Up here, up right here. And right in the point, I'm going to go up. And then on the side right here, we're going to go down. Just like that. You can take your needle out. We're going to get us another piece of thread. All right, for the other side, we're going to pull us off some more thread. We'll get a little bit more this time because we've got to go all the way down that back seam We're going to tie this up the same exact way we did on the other side. We're going to do the same thing. We'll run right down to this point and that point, and we're going to stitch those together. All right, now on this side, I'm going to do the same thing we did on the other side. We'll come up through this point in the center, and I'm going to come down through the point on the side. And what that has done, now we have two strings that are coming down on either side. We can pull those tight and we can tie these two together, and that's going to bring all that together snug. It won't go anywhere. We'll do the same thing that we did around the burr of the antler. I'm going to tie a lock knot, which is just 2 or 3 overhand knots. Pull that tight, snug that up. I'm going to tie a couple overhand knots to lock that in place. All right, now you're going to cut off your slack. Just make sure that you don't cut off your long end that goes to your needle. Cut off your other piece. Now you've got one thread going to one seam. All right, what I'm going to do next, bring your thread back over the top of the head, get it out of the way. Make sure that your skin is up around the burr of the antlers where it's supposed to be. You don't get any glue coming out anywhere. And I'm going to take, what this is an old beat up paintbrush. You can use a stick or anything else. I like to get me a big blob of glue on there, about like that. Then raise this up and just stick that up under there. Take that and spread it around, all around on the back side where you just made those stitches, and all up in there between the antlers where you didn't put any glue. Just like that. Now you don't have glue all over your hands, don't have glue all over the cape. Now that we've done that, we're going to go and we're going to put the clay inside of the ear butts so that your ears don't look like this. For that, I'm going to use this moist air dry pottery clay. Amico is the brand. This is a whole lot softer. Y'all can tell how pliable this is right here. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to add a little bit of clay at a time. You want to take your thumb and hold the inner ear in place so that it doesn't push back up out of that ear liner while you're working clay in around the ear liner and up around the ear butt. There are many, many, many different ways of doing this. Some people prefer to do this before they put the cape on the form. I've tried that before and liked it for a little while, but I've kind of gone back to this. Only because every cape is so completely different in size that once I get it on the head, I can really, because you can see this is a giant deer. This deer's got a huge head on him, and he's got really big ear butts. I mean, you can see how much skin there is. It's going to take a lot of clay, to fill that in. And normally what I would have put in it on the table wouldn't have been near enough anyway, and I still would have had to go back and do all this. So I just like to custom build it for the deer that I'm working on as I'm working on him. Just You're going to take it and work it around, all around the bottom of that ear butt, from the back all the way around to the front. And make sure it's pressed on up in there too against that ear liner, so that as it dries, it's all just one big piece. About enough in that one. We'll do the same thing on the other side. It's got plenty of clay in the ears, so now what I'm going to do is go back here to this back stitch, and we're going to do the baseball stitch all the way down until I get to the end of this. Once I get down to the very end, I'm going to show y'all how I'll tie that off. All right, a quick tip before I finish this up right here. If you ever get down to a certain point on the cape and you run out of cape thread on the back of the neck, you can always take another piece, go up through one side of the stitch, across and back down through the other side. And then take your end, just tie your lock knot like you would at the top of the, where you made your V cut. Cinch it up, take the tag end of your first string right there underneath that knot and cinch that up. You can snip off both ends like that, and then just continue your stitch. You got a whole nother piece of thread. All right, we're gonna get in here close right here. I just made my last stitch down here at the very bottom. What I'm gonna do to tie this off is I'm gonna go over on the same side of where my stitch came out, come back out of that stitch, out of the center of the cut. Then we're going to take this and we're going to tie it to one of the previous stitches. Just do the best you can not to get hair all in this knot. Won't be a little bit in there, but it's not going to make any difference once you tuck it. Just tie you a couple of half hitches in there, like that. It's important to keep in mind too, something I did not show, the way that I used that brush to put the glue in up under the skull cap. As I was coming down the stitches, about every 3 or 4 inches, I would stop and put glue up under that stitch. So there's glue all the way down through here, just kind of gluing as you go to help hold all that in place. All right, so once you've got your knot made, you're gonna take your needle, go right back down into that seam, go over and just come back out of the cape, some random spot. Make sure that there's not any hair in that loop. And when you pull that loop to, it'll pull the knot down into the cape just like that. And all you have to do is take that end, clip it off fairly close to the skin, and it'll go right back down under the hide, just like that. Okay, moving back around to the front of the deer, we're going to work on the mouth, the nose, and the eyes, get all that tucked. We'll start out by pulling this back. Now remember, we didn't put any glue on the nose and the snout yet, so we're going to go ahead and get that glued up. Make sure you got plenty back here inside of all these muscles, all those cracks around the veins and detail of the face. A little bit of glue up in the nostrils. I'm going to take a little bead of clay and run it right along the mouth, up inside of the mouth, just inside that lip line. That way, as we tuck our skin, that'll get rid of any voids that we may have made. You don't want extra room up in there because it will try to back out if it has too much. Just like that. Some glue along that clay. In case any of y'all are wondering, got this wrap on my finger. I use that to press my needle into while I'm stitching. I didn't actually cut myself. But if y'all were wondering where that came from all of a sudden, go ahead and take that off. Just pull the nose back down over that. Grab a tucking tool. Got a different one that I use for the nostrils and for the mouth. Go ahead and tuck the nostrils in. Do some more work with them in just a little bit. Tuck them in there, keep that glue from drying up while we're working on everything else. You're going to spin your deer upside down. We're going to tuck the lips. Some people prefer to start with the top. Some people prefer to start with the bottom. I like the bottom side, starting out with. To me, it's just easier, but not very important. Got that done. We'll come back, do the top. Y'all can see how easy that is to tuck. It's not difficult at all because we made that slot big enough to allow for the lips. But by also filling that with clay and then covering it in glue, now it's pinched in there really snug. And when all that dries together, you end up with a real tight fit that's really almost custom. And it saves you so much time. Now, this is a little trick y'all may have seen me use before. It's a carburetor screwdriver. This is my favorite way to finish up the lips. Take the flat edge of this. I've got it filed where it's not real sharp. But I like to lay that in there flat, press, and then twist. And what that does is it pulls, depending on which way I'm twisting. If I twist this way, it'll pull that bottom, or the top, it'll actually be the top lip upside down. It'll pull that way, or I can twist and pull that way. But y'all watch. So when I pull that, how it tucks that in, I just twist, it just pulls that cape right into that seam. I do the same thing both directions down through there, and it just squeezes that right together. All right, flip it back around. Now we're going to work on the eyes. Something that I like to do, the last step before I tuck this, is I'll take my scalpel and right on the inside of where this roll is, where the eyelashes are attached, turn that upside down. You can kind of see where that edge is, where we thinned it. You can split that. Right there where that thickness is. And what that will allow is you'll be able to tuck that eyelid, and it will create a very sharp line where that eyelid is. Do the same thing on the top and the bottom. just like that. You can see how much more it opened that skin up. I'm going to trim off just a little bit of that. Trim it to maybe a little more than 1/4 inch. We'll get just a little bit of glue on my finger. And you can use a tucking tool or modeling tool or whatever. Cover that with glue all the way around the tear duct and around the eye. And I'll take some and get on my fingertips and just wipe it on both sides of this skin. That way you've got adhesion onto the eyeball and you've got adhesion onto the clay on both directions. And for doing this, I've got a really thin, little small tucking tool here, little flat edge. What you want to do is you want to pull everything down in place until your tear duct meets the tear duct of the form. Get that lined up first. Just like that. Once you've got that in place, you can follow that back up to the front corner of that eye. That'll have everything in place where you want it. And then I like to start tucking the top lid first. Get that front corner. Just put your tucking tool at the very edge of that skin. Slide it against that eye and press it up under that clay. Just like that. By doing the top first, you can get a full tuck up under that eyelid because the bottom tends to pull on it. If you do the bottom first, sometimes it messes that top all up when you try to do it last. Too, you've got to retuck that tear duct. It just seems to pull everything loose worse if you do it the other way. I'm going to tuck the front corner and do the same thing to the bottom. Just like that. All right, now, still got the tear duct where it needs to be. Now what I like to do right here, press down a little bit on that clay and get your eye a little bit more shut than you're going to want it finished. Press on the back side of that. You don't want any thickness in the back corner of the eye right here. And you don't want any thickness down below and up into the tear duct on the bottom. You want that pressed almost completely into that form and all the glue worked out right there to where it's just a smooth, flat transition. You want it almost like in a teardrop shape. The front edge right here on the top, you're going to want to take your thumb and just mash right there. Press that up against that form. Get it in there tight. Just make sure that tear duct stays in place. Okay, now get my other tucking tool. We're going to build the eyelid. So what I do is start right here in this corner where the eyelid would start normally, and I'll take my tool upside down with this little scooped edge and just start flattening and pushing up slightly. What that's going to do is it's going to roll eyelashes back out from under that eye. Just like that. You want this eyelid, or eyebrow, I'm sorry, to stay kind of flat. Make sure this line follows the edge of that eye real well. And I like to flatten this out a little bit with my tucking tool right up against this long hair. It kind of makes a little bit of a transition line right there. You can even take this and tuck that slightly, and it will define that edge and make a really cool looking contour in the top of that eyebrow. Really gives it that old buck look. All right, now that's generally where we want it. It's going to take a few days for this to start to set up. You're going to want to keep going back and adjust and make sure that dries exactly how you want it. But one last thing we're going to do is take a brush that I've got sitting in some water, just any kind of paintbrush, and we're just going to rub that glue and clay off that glass. Wipe your brush a little bit more dry and just dry it off a little bit there. It's going to clean that edge up, just like that. I'm going to do that to the other side, and then we're going to continue with the bottom. You want to use enough glue right here to make sure that you cover the form, but you don't want to use too much down on the bottom, because as this dries, a lot of the moisture from the rest of the cape is going to drain down into the bottom of this. You're going to end up with excess glue and water if you're not careful. One thing that you can do, if your cape is still very wet or you have a whole lot of humidity, is leave the bottom of this cape completely undone, at least for maybe overnight, and let it drain. You can come back the next day and you can take that and glue up the bottom part and then go ahead and staple the back side of that cape. I used to do that some before I got my dehumidifier, but now everything dries up well enough to where I don't have to worry about that anymore. A few things you want to make sure of when you're finishing this up. You want to just rush and get all this out of line, or it's going to make the whole mount look bad, especially when you're looking at it from the ground up on the wall. But you want to make sure that where this cowlick is and this line, make sure it comes straight down that brisket. Make sure your white is up under the armpits. And right here on the front of the legs, you can see where that white and brown transition is. You want that to go right down the front of the shoulders on both sides. Just like that. Then you're ready to staple them up. I'm using 3/8 staples and a regular T50 hand stapler. You can use pneumatic, whatever you want to use. All right, now you can see what I did. Went from the inside of the armpits right here, the front shoulders, and finished out that center. And what I'm going to do, go ahead and trim this off of the brisket. Get it out of the way. And then right here, where the points of these shoulders come up, we'll cut that straight down. Just like that. Remove any excess down here that's in the way. This one right here doesn't really have a whole lot of extra. We're going to leave that on there for just a second. I'm going to show y'all something. Where you've got this flap of skin right here on these shoulders. If you'll go right there in that crease, take a scalpel and cut it straight down. Just like that. Then you can go from the top, just cut a straight line down like that. Go from the top, cut a straight line down like that. Then those two sides right there will meet flush like that. You can staple that together. Pull up sideways. Before you put any more staples in it, you'll make sure that all your fur is in line. And make sure all your air and glue in excess is worked out to the back end of this before you button them up. You see how some of the hair is coming up? You want all that to kind of come down. As you pull that and kind of taxi it into place, all that hair will smooth out. Once it's laying where it needs to, see how it's all going the same direction now? That's when you know you got it in the right place. Work these bubbles out. You see that little bubble is up under my hand. Just work that out to that back side. Make sure you stay down in all those little gaps and ridges between those muscles. Work all those muscles into there. Just like that. You just want to flatten it out on the back side and put your staples in. All right, now we got to trim this skin off. We'll start on this side and work my way all the way around the deer. These little extra pieces, just cut them off. I like to use scissors for that. I used to use a knife, but as you can see, using scissors, you end up with a lot cleaner look on the back of that deer. All right, well, that's a lot more work having to film it than just having to mount one without filming. I know that. But y'all, take a look at what we've just built. Look at that hammer of a dang whitetail buck. What a toad. Big old deer. Double throat patch, man, that is awesome. Big old giant head on him, Roman nose. Check out that ear position. You got a little attitude, don't he? Well, guys, there is no way that this video has not been helpful in some way or another. I really appreciate y'all hanging out with me. I'm glad that I took the time to do all this because this should answer a lot of questions that I've had in breaks and pieces of different videos I've made. I've made so many different videos, and none of them have just been an all-inclusive A to B type video, and I think that this one will sum up a lot of the questions that people have got. But now, listen, if y'all do have any questions, please ask in the comments below. If you send me a direct or private message, more than likely not going to get answered. I'm getting flooded with so many of those right now that I just don't have time to answer all of them. But please, in the comments below, ask whatever you want to. I'll do the best I can to try to answer it. And there's tons of really good taxidermists that watch this sometimes that may even have better answers than I do and can teach both of us. But I've learned so much over the last couple of years since I started my channel from doing these videos. People give me different tips and advice. And I think that this method has come a long way from my first how to mount a deer head video. So I really think that this will get y'all to that next step of just being able to mount a deer head into where you can start charging and into some better quality work. I know it has definitely helped my quality, helped my confidence with what I'm doing, especially my tanning has just gotten a whole lot better. But I've learned a lot, and I'm always glad to try and share that with y'all. So if y'all would like the video, if you enjoyed it, give me a thumbs up. If y'all have not already, be sure to subscribe. Really helps me out. It doesn't cost y'all anything to subscribe to the channel. It's just like following somebody on YouTube, on Facebook or Instagram, but it really helps out my channel. Also, the stuff that I've used in this video, I'm going to try to put links in the description of anything that I can remember that Amazon has got, where y'all can just go straight to that link and buy it without having to dig through there and search for it. Plus, you'll know exactly what it is that I'm using. If there's anything that y'all are looking for on there that you don't see, comment on the video, and I'll try to go and find it and stick that link on there for you. But anyway, guys, really appreciate y'all watching. Appreciate you hanging out with me. We will see y'all in the next video.